Have you ever wondered how a single event can change the course of world history? Consider Japan's invasion of Manchuria in 1931. In the early 20th century, East Asia was a region of intricate political dynamics. Japan, a nation on the rise, was caught in a whirlwind of industrialization and modernization. Yet beneath this progressive facade, a militaristic regime was simmering, fueled by a potent combination of nationalistic fervor and economic necessity. Japan was essentially a resource-poor island nation. The rapid industrial growth demanded natural resources, fuel and raw materials which were scarce within its own borders. To the north, however, lay Manchuria, a region teeming with the very resources Japan so desperately needed. Manchuria, a vast territory under Chinese sovereignty, was abundant in iron and coal. Its fertile lands offered the potential for agricultural expansion, while its strategic location provided a buffer against the Soviet Union. For the ambitious Japanese, Manchuria was a prize too tempting to resist. As the militaristic regime in Japan grew stronger, so did its ambitions. The military leaders who held significant sway over the civilian government advocated expansionism as a solution to Japan's economic woes. They believed that acquiring Manchuria would not only secure the resources necessary for Japan's industrial growth, but also elevate the nation's status as a global power. The stage was set. Japan's gaze had turned towards Manchuria, and its militaristic ideology had found a target. A new chapter in world history was about to be written, one that would shake the very foundations of international relations and alter the geopolitical landscape forever. But as Japan set its sights on Manchuria, the world watched, seemingly oblivious. Little did they know, this event was not just a regional conflict. It was a prelude to a far greater war, a spark that would ignite a global conflagration. As Japan set its sights on Manchuria, the world watched, unaware of the profound consequences this event would have on global geopolitics. In September 1931, Japan launched its invasion, a move that would forever alter the balance of power in East Asia. This was not a spur-of-the-moment decision, but a meticulously planned operation. The spark that lit the fuse was the Mukden incident, an event that to this day is shrouded in controversy and intrigue. In a cunning move, Japanese military officers staged an explosion on the South Manchuria Railway, which they controlled. They accused Chinese nationalists of the act, using it as a pretext to justify their invasion. This event marked the beginning of a campaign that would see Japan rapidly establish dominance over Manchuria. With the world watching, the Japanese forces moved swiftly. They seized major cities, secured key strategic points, and effectively neutralized any resistance. Within months, they had control over the entire region. But they didn't stop there. In an audacious move, Japan established a puppet state, Manchukuo, with the last emperor of the Qing dynasty, Puyi, as its figurehead. This was more than just a territorial grab, it was a strategic maneuver. Manchukuo, rich in resources, would serve as a launchpad for Japan's further ambitions in East Asia. But Japan's actions were not without consequences. The invasion of Manchuria was a blatant violation of Chinese sovereignty, and it sent a shockwave through the international community. The League of Nations, the precursor to the United Nations, was left scrambling for an effective response. However, the League's indecisiveness only emboldened Japan. The lack of a swift, decisive response signaled to other militaristic regimes around the world that aggression could go unpunished. This would have far-reaching implications, setting the stage for the rise of fascism and the eventual outbreak of World War II. Japan's swift and uncontested conquest of Manchuria sent shockwaves around the world. The world had been plunged into a new era of uncertainty, and the fragile balance of power in East Asia had been irrevocably shattered. Japan had made its move, and the world would never be the same again. In the face of Japan's aggression, the international community struggled to respond effectively. This was an era where the idea of global governance was still in its infancy. The League of Nations, the precursor to today's United Nations, was the body entrusted with maintaining world peace, yet it found itself woefully unprepared to handle the audacity of Japan's military expansionism. The League commissioned the Lytton Report, led by British politician and diplomat Victor Bulwer-Lytton. The report, published in 1932, condemned Japan's actions in Manchuria but stopped short of suggesting concrete punitive measures. This lack of decisive action was a clear signal of the League's limitations. Japan, emboldened by this lack of a robust response, promptly withdrew from the League of Nations in 1933. This was not just a blow to the League's authority, but also to the world's collective faith in maintaining peace through international cooperation. The global community's impotence was all too apparent, and it sent a clear message to other militaristic regimes that aggression could go unchecked. Across the Atlantic, the United States watched the events unfold with disquiet. Washington had long maintained a policy of isolationism, but the escalating tensions in East Asia were a cause for concern. Yet the US, along with the major European powers, chose to remain on the sidelines, opting for diplomatic protests rather than military intervention. This collective inaction by the world's powers further underscored the League's inability to enforce its mandate. The inability of the League of Nations to curb Japan's aggression marked a significant failure in collective security. The world had hoped for an era of peace after the devastation of the Great War, but as Japan's militaristic ambitions went unchecked, these hopes were dashed, and the stage was set for an even greater conflict, a conflict that would engulf the world in the flames of the Second World War. The impact of Japan's invasion of Manchuria extended far beyond the borders of East Asia. This was not an isolated incident, but a spark that ignited a global tinderbox. It was a brazen act of aggression that emboldened other militaristic regimes, notably Germany and Italy, contributing to the rise of fascism across Europe. Let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. In the early 30s, the world was still reeling from the aftermath of the Great War, a conflict so devastating that it was then known as the War to End All Wars. Yet within a decade, the world was on the brink of an even greater conflict. Why? One major factor was the rise of militaristic regimes fueled by nationalistic fervor and a desire for expansion. Japan's invasion of Manchuria was a clear signal to these regimes that aggression could pay off. It demonstrated that a country could defy the international community and get away with it. This was a lesson not lost on Adolf Hitler in Germany or Benito Mussolini in Italy. Both leaders were emboldened by Japan's actions to pursue their own expansionist agendas, setting the stage for the devastating conflict that was to become World War II. But the impact of the invasion wasn't limited to Europe. It destabilized the delicate balance of power in East Asia, creating a power vacuum and a climate of uncertainty. This made further conflict in the region almost inevitable. The invasion of Manchuria was a clear violation of Chinese sovereignty and a challenge to the stability of the entire region. In the end, Japan's invasion of Manchuria was much more than a regional conflict. It was a catalyst for a series of events that would reshape the world. It was a harbinger of the wider conflict and devastation that was to come. Japan's invasion of Manchuria was a harbinger of the wider conflict and devastation that was to come. Reflecting on Japan's invasion of Manchuria, we see a pivotal moment in history that dramatically reshaped the world. This audacious move by Japan not only triggered an unprecedented shift in the balance of power in East Asia, but also sent shockwaves through the global geopolitical landscape. The invasion was more than just a violation of Chinese sovereignty. It was a clear, tangible manifestation of an ambitious expansionist policy that sought to redefine Japan's place in the world. The League of Nations, the global peacekeeper of the time, found itself in a quandary. The lack of decisive action against Japan's aggression demonstrated the League's limitations and, in many ways, emboldened other militaristic regimes to pursue their own expansionist agendas. The world watched, waited, and ultimately war followed. The invasion of Manchuria was not an isolated incident, but a prelude to the broader conflict that was to come. It set the stage for World War II, a conflict that would engulf the world in a firestorm of violence and destruction. It was a testament to the fact that unchecked aggression and the pursuit of self-interest at the expense of others can lead to catastrophic consequences. But the impact of the invasion didn't stop at the outbreak of World War II. The repercussions of this audacious act of aggression rippled through the decades that followed. It fundamentally altered the geopolitical landscape, shaping the relations and tensions between East and West that persist to this day. In the grand tapestry of history, the invasion of Manchuria stands as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked ambition and the potential for conflict when powerful nations disregard the sovereignty of others. It underscores the importance of international cooperation, dialogue, and respect for international law in maintaining global peace and stability. As we look back on these events, we are reminded of how the echoes of history continue to shape our world today.